Solo.
Greedo.
Solo.
Greedo.
Solo.
All right, welcome back to this episode of the Cantina Club. We're going to be talking about Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame and just MCU stuff in general. You know me, of course, Greedo. I've got two other old white males with me. We got Tarkin the Otter over there on the right hand side. And what is your Cantina name going to be? Mr. Sinistar. We have Sinistar on the left.
I'm not sure he even knows the concept of the Cantina name.
Oh, we just always we chose names that had to do with Star Wars characters from the Cantina, or that might be in the Cantina at some point in time. So there's Gundark, Carillion, and I was the only one that ended up with an actual movie name, Greedo, because I was the first one to choose. So I didn't know any better. I thought that was the Greedo race. I didn't know that was an individual person.
But I chose Tarkin the Otter. Grand Moff Tarkin the Otter.
Grand Moff Tarkin the Otter. Kind of an old private joke that no one will get. So anyway, we're going to be talking about MCU, and maybe you guys just real quick, just give a description of what your relationship to this material is. If you read the comics, if you're just a movie fan, give us a place to start.
Well, I have been reading them since I was whatever age one starts reading comics, and I had comics. I don't know how. Like my mom said, that my sister and I both learned to read from comic books, and it was always Marvel comic books. It was not DC. I read some, but not really, and that went all the way up until very recently when I've started reading some DC now that they've released them all online. And when I started taking it seriously, or at some point when I started actually collecting comics when I was, I don't know, 14 or something, my sister had a ne'er-do-well boyfriend who sold his comics, I think, for drugs, honestly. And I bought 2 boxes of comics going back into the 70s. So I had Avengers going back into the 70s and, well, maybe further, actually, now that I think about it.
Does anybody know offhand when Avengers started? Now that you brought that up real quick.
65?
60s?
Yeah, 60s.
65.
Okay,
60.
Go ahead. So you
I'd
had
say
it going
65.
back to the 70s.
So, and then just to give a level of my Marvel, investment obsession. So they have an app that they've had out for a couple of years. You can subscribe to it for X amount a year, and you can read more or less everything. They don't have everything up there. But they have a lot of everything. And so I
in digital formats, right?
In digital formats. So I went through and read the Avengers from the beginning with all the annuals they had up, everything straight through. I read Captain America all the way straight through. I read Fantastic Four straight through. And I had fun. I mean, some of this I did while we were overseas and I had time on my hands. And I had fun reading it because you can get things like, when do they stop using wretched female? Or
Right.
When does that drop out? And also, when do they stop using these bizarro, silly, made-up names for things? Because they had a whole thing in the early days of making up a thingamajigger to solve something, and it had this bizarre name. So it's really, I've read them at that level.
Okay.
And I read them straight through. Actually, another important thing is when you stopped, because I read straight through to sometime in high school, and I stopped really reading. And there's a funny thing that happens among comic fans where the best period of comics in their world, they're like, they were never as good as, it's whatever you were reading when you were 12 years old. Absolutely.
Right. That's a common thing in all media. Just like as a Star Wars fan, there's nothing better than the original Star Wars that I saw when I was 10 or whatever, in the movie theater. It can't be, in my mind, it can't be assailed. So
yeah.
That would have been in the 80s you stopped, and then more recently, digitally, you went back and read a lot of this stuff.
When I had disposable income and all of a sudden all these things are available. I don't buy. For a while, I was buying the trade paperbacks some years back, but it's really expensive and compared to just.
As far as the movies, have you been going to those off and on since
the minute those came out? I watched them.
Okay, all right. Sinistar, what's your kind of story on this stuff?
Very similar.
Were you allowed to have comic books?
No, actually, I was. Didn't we didn't have a lot of disposable income when I was growing up, so not
Right.
there wasn't a huge collection like some of our other peers had. But my impactful comics were particularly the George Perez artwork in his run in the Avengers and Teen Titans when
Right.
they
Okay. Cool.
first
Yeah.
ran through. And very, very similarly, serious into comics, probably age 9 to probably just after high school,
Yeah.
and picked up other sundry things to take up my time, and then again once I started having the disposable income, access to digital content, I picked up stuff off and on throughout the years. I remember I did dip back in when Watchmen came out.
Mm-hmm.
Read those, and some odd off and on things. And then now I pick up stuff again as it comes out. The Preacher series, I read.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so but as far as the movies go, I've pretty much seen everything, at the theater, either at or right as it's released.
I know this isn't a movie thing, but you mentioned Teen Titans and the Perez Avengers. So was it the art that got you? Because that's both Perez.
Yeah, no. It's absolutely his. He was
Teen Titans is DC, right?
Huh?
What was that?
What's that?
Teen Titans is DC, isn't it?
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay.
which I did read actually. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just a real his style, and he's a very classic. When you think of comic books, he falls right into the wheelhouse of what classic comic art looks like. It just always and he was always paired. He was an A talent at the time, so he was
Right.
always paired with the Marv Wolfman type writers of the world. That those were the again the A game writers of the time. So I would still argue that that was the best of the best when I was reading back then, and it's heavily influential on what you see in the MCU today.
Right.
I had a completely different background in that I was one of the denominations that doesn't encourage any sort of cartoons, dancing, or or that I grew up with. So I never looked at a comic book except in the convenience store or whatever. And I remember comics always did that wonderful job of grabbing your attention with the covers and making you want to know what's going on. And my favorite covers, and that I ended up buying eventually, was Daredevil. And Daredevil's Marvel, right? So so my favorite hero was Daredevil. My favorite villain was Kingpin. Nothing about you, Mr. Sinistar over there. but I like that look, the whole clean shaven Kingpin look. But when I was a kid, my sister bought Archie comics, and so in summers when we were on a farm in Arkansas, I would read her Archie comics over and over, and I'd walk down to the grocery store and buy another Archie comic. So somehow, from the age of 8 to 14, probably, we ended up with a stack to the roof of Archie comics, which is like Betty and Veronica, Archie, Jughead, every single title. They had a title for everybody, The Adventures of Moose or whatever. I don't remember, but and those were all just silly throwaway. I don't even really remember them, but that was the kind of dumb comics that I had as a kid. And then later it was Daredevil, and really the only comic I was ever really into was Judge Dredd, and it was that run with the very, very grim-looking characters and the extremely.
Is there another run?
Well, yes,
I'm not familiar outside of that run.
There's I forget the artist's name, but there was an artist that I was really, really into, who I thought his work was just amazing, and all of the comics during that his run and period, the artwork was incredible, and so as a as satire and as action and as horror and everything, I really loved Judge Dredd. So, but that was later. I was I don't know, in the early 80s probably, and I still have some of those. I found some of that stuff the other day, and of course I have a whole run of Star Wars comics because I subscribed as a kid. Never liked them. But I subscribed and then just kind of forgot that I had a subscription. They would show up, and they had runs where they were briefly interesting, where the art was better, but it seemed to me that Marvel never really got Star Wars. So, which you can't really blame them. It's a different kind of thing. Okay, so anyway, about the there you go. Nice. You just
I knew I
happen
had
to have that
something
laying
here.
around.
Oh wait, here's and that
Yeah,
the big
very cool.
monster
Do
Marvel.
you have one with like the green rabbit on the front, the angry green
No,
rabbit?
these are just the giant. This is
Yeah, the giant annuals.
bigger
and
than
stuff.
my head.
Yeah.
So
I love the one where Vader's reaching down and Luke and the others are like pawns on a chessboard and he's grabbing at Luke and Luke's trying to stab his hand with the lightsaber. It's like, what the hell is going on here? And Luke is like, here I stand though I may die, or something completely un-Luke Skywalker like. There's also a great, not to derail this completely, but there's a great moment in one of the first Star Wars comics where Luke blatantly uses the dark side, where it says he taps into his anger and rage, and that's how he gets them out of the situation, because he finally gets some of the force on his side. It's like, wow, it's by definition the dark side. It was very cool. They had no idea.
Awesome.
It was before Empire
Since
came out.
I don't know, thought I'd remind us of our topic.
Yeah, very nice.
Oh.
Hey, show us who's on there real quick. Hold that up a little closer, because I forget what the classic designs and everything are supposed to look like.
This is 60s, and this is
That's the Captain America I remember.
This is like second or third tier, depending on how you do it, like second or third team.
Well, there's Iron Man, Thor, Captain America.
We've got Iron Man, we've got Giant Man, which is Hank Pym.
Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry, it's Goliath there. Wasp.
He was played by what's his nuts from The Matrix. Yeah.
Well, no, he was played by there's a different Goliath.
Oh, okay. I thought.
So
Yeah.
the Goliath character is Hank Pym. It's played by.
Okay. All right.
What's his nuts from everything else? From Romancing the Stone, Thor, Captain America, Black Panther, Vision.
I was thinking of Lawrence Fishburne, I think.
Yeah.
He was in Goliath, which was also, a nod to the comics, because there was a Goliath who they in a true 70s fashion, I think, called Black Goliath for a while, but I can't remember for sure. And he was Pym's assistant, which was they joked about in the Ant-Man movie.
Ant-Man and the Wasp, I believe, yeah. So just going from this point forward, even though no one watches this and it doesn't matter and everybody's been to see the movie already, we're going to say spoilers from this point forward, because we're no good at censoring ourselves anyway. But if you haven't seen it, you're the only person on earth who hasn't. So
that would be Lucy.
Oh, Lucy hasn't seen it? Okay. Well, yeah, and
she's not gonna watch this.
I don't think my girlfriend's seen it either. She was when the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 came out. She's like, "Let's go see Guardians of the Galaxy 2." I said, "But you haven't seen 1." And she's like, "Well, then show it to me on cable." And I said, "Okay." So we're sitting there, watching TV, and we're watching Guardians of the Galaxy 1. She goes, "What the fuck is this?" She suddenly realized we were watching a movie. She's like, "What the fuck is this?" I'm like, "That's Guardians of the Galaxy." She goes, "No, that's not. This is a cartoon." I was like. She's like, "There's a raccoon there. What's going on?" I was like, "You don't like this?" She's like, "No, this is terrible." I said, "You won't get it then. There's no point in even continuing. We're not gonna go see Guardians of the Galaxy 2. This is what it is. It's a comedy, and yeah, it's
well, there is absolutely no point. Oh, and that's what Marvel's done so well is. I mean, there's that joke that went around for a while that DC's like, how do we make our characters more realistic? How do we make Wonder Woman fit into the modern age? And they're like, and Marvel's like, I got a raccoon and a talking tree.
Yeah, the talking tree sells a lot of merchandise. Not the gritty, burnt talking tree or whatever that DC would have made. But I gotta say that this is a little bit jumping ahead or off topic or whatever, but DC's got the villains in my book, in my opinion. In the media and everything, they've got the best villains. I can't think of, out of all these Marvel movies, there haven't been too many memorable villains to me until I forget his name. Thanos.
Yeah, I really missed it. I missed a beat there because I really should have come up with a really forgettable Marvel villain to throw out right there.
But on the flip side, this is something we're not talking about really at all, but Marvel's nailed the villains in the best sort of way on the Netflix. With this,
yes,
and then cancel them.
Yeah.
That's
probably because of Disney, though, isn't it?
It is because of
Disney's gonna grab all that under their umbrella.
I think they'll, or at least some of them will end back up on Hulu.
But you're right;
Yeah.
they totally nailed them. They nailed the ones you had never heard of. I mean,
Daredevil is one of my favorite shows ever, even with all of its weaknesses and tons of filler. It's just like interminable filler in that show and all those shows, in my opinion. But when they get down to it, if you can watch it as a movie, to pick the 3 best episodes from each season or something, it dominates definitely.
and that first season was just episode after episode of he bleeds. When he's hit, it hurts. And that was great.
Yeah,
that's what worked. It was literally
and that stairwell fight is one of the best things I've ever seen in any superhero media. That first one, they had one like it in every season after that.
I was going to say they had to have one in every show.
Yeah. Yeah, the prison one was great too, where he was trying to escape the prison during the riot, and they shot it all as one shot. That was great, but the stairwell was just brutality incarnate. It was so phenomenal.
And the payoff was amazing too, because the payoff is him with the mask off with the kid. It was great.
Yeah, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I just remember the violence.
You're just there for the violence.
And Kingpin was amazing. What's his name? Vincent D'Onofrio. Wow, he was just like a revelation to me in that part. I loved that, the way they built that character and everything. I couldn't wait for him to come back in the last one. So, anyway, we're talking about Netflix now, but about the MCU movies, what is your guys? If you have a favorite, do you even have one? Is there one that kind of stands out to you? Because there's like 24 of them.
Yeah. I was thinking about that beforehand, knowing that you might ask something like that. And I basically break them down into tiers. You know, I have kind of my tier 1 through 4 of the movies. And I think for me, I really consider that there's 5 Avengers movies. There's the first Avengers, Age of Ultron, then Civil War, which is, I know it's Captain America.
Captain America, yeah.
It is essentially an Avengers movie. Then Infinity War and Endgame. My favorites, Civil War is my favorite of the Avengers movies. And unlike you, I didn't like Endgame, I liked Endgame. I didn't like Infinity War that much. Now, on rewatching, I got over some of what I didn't like. But as far as its, any of the MCU movies that has had to move away from some of the source material to make it a digestible movie format, but the decision they made in Infinity War, the whole Thanos' reasoning that he was going to balance the universe by killing half the people in it. The original source material, and I haven't read it in several years, but it's essentially at that time he's infatuated with death. So in order to prove his worthiness to death, he's going to kill half of everything in one fell swoop.
Sort of make a sacrifice to the character death, right?
Right. It's a female incarnate, so he's infatuated in love with her, and that's his motivation, because and it's just one of those things where it doesn't have
your organic web shooters.
What now?
It's your Paul in the organic web shooters moment.
Yeah, exactly. It really irritated me, because if nothing else, for Earth, all that did was reset us back to the 1970s.
Right.
We're 30 years away from being in the exact same setting anyway. But when I went back and rewatched
there's so many ways you could achieve the same goal without killing half of things. You could just sterilize 75% of everything, or you could. It's a fantasy movie. There are huge plot holes in all of them.
I was about to go there if you didn't. It's a fantasy movie.
But Thanos doesn't strike you as a madman, so it is hard to understand. You want him to have a sensible reasoning that you can defend, and that won't take you out of the movie a little bit, because he isn't a typical mustache twirling, just maniacal villain. He seems to have thought about what he's doing, and very methodical and kind of a different sort of villain. So I see what
still
you're saying.
A jackass. He really is a jackass. Like he's only I can do it. That's the flip side of him with all that other stuff. And
also it was revealed by the end of this one that he really just wanted gratitude, which is another word for worship. He wanted people to acknowledge how great he was by the end, which made him yet another megalomaniacal personality, really, at the end of the day. But Go ahead. I get what you were saying, though.
Yeah. So, but actually, I want to go back to the whole common theme through us nerds and our movies that get adapted from our beloved texts. So,
Right.
so
Dead Sea Scrolls, the movie.
Exactly. Wow, I want to pause and just chew on that for a minute.
Yeah.
All three of us went to Southern Baptist High School, so yeah, we Dead Sea Scrolls the adaptation.
Some of us paid attention though, Danny. I mean,
oh, that's true. That's true.
No real names.
So I remember sitting in through the Lord of the Rings movies, and I had a coworker who was just like, "There's no Tom Bombadil. What horrifying!" And I'm like, "Skiddly boobily boppity boop." There's a reason there's no Tom Bombadil, my friend.
They should have cast a rapper as Tom Bombadil. That would have been amazing.
That's what Marvel would have done.
Lil Jon is Tom Bombadil.
Marvel would have done that, and it would have worked. That's the thing with their movies is they have done when they've made a lot of the changes they've done really well, and they've because they're constantly changing stuff. But there's a very common, and I'm totally not dissing you, Sinistar here, but there's a very common nerd reaction to any change in stuff, and it's funny because you recognize that that's the one that just hit you. Like that one's just it got me. Like
yeah, there's certain things.
Well, but to be fair, I've rolled with the punches and been very pleased with how they've worked around and made changes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's like they had something great, and they replaced it with something that was just meh.
Yeah,
it was a watered down. It's I guess it just comes across as too much of a horror show to say, I'm going to, just for the sake of death and mayhem, going to kill everybody. And instead, he flips it to be, it's, in his mind, a noble purpose. Whereas the original source material is just evil. I like that a little bit better.
Well,
but again, not over that.
Would he have been mustachio twirling if they'd gone with the original, courting Mr. Steph?
Depends on how they did it and what performance he turned in, what the script was. But I think it comes down to these movies don't spend a whole lot of time on the villains. They really don't. Yeah. I can't think of a single one except Black Panther did a little bit more, but he still was more of an action character. But he's one of the better villains in my mind that stuck with me was Killmonger from Black Panther, just because his powerful charisma, I guess. But yeah, the villains, that would have taken some time, I think, to show Thanos, and he was lurking in the background of all these movies. They didn't really, he was a mystery. So by the time they revealed it, they wanted to go more into his daughters than any relationship he had with. And then just out of curiosity, was this death character the same character in Ragnarok, Thor's sister? Or did they just use that for inspiration?
Yeah, there was a similar, I don't know if, and I'm trying to remember, and I'm going to remember it wrong, and I don't want to get any
misinformation.
Geek wrath thrown up against you for my misuttering. Paul would have been the.
I'm the Sergeant Schultz of comics, so don't worry about it. I can neither confirm that Google is my only friend, and it's way too complicated to Google. It'd be like a 40-page article on all this stuff.
I did rewatch Spider-Man: Homecoming, and that's where I would throw out another good villain. I thought Michael Keaton.
He was great. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was great.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. They did do a little bit of time with him, and they did develop that character a little bit, but there was only, his performance was so good. Again, I think if you put the right people in there, they don't have to have a whole lot. You like Black Panther, they didn't go a whole ton into it. They showed his backstory, and then he was just turned loose, and he was a good villain. And there's something to be said for that. Like, are we counting Deadpool?
No.
As MCU movie? No. Okay, so no X-Men, no Deadpool. Okay.
No, but I mean, you could talk X-Men came to mind in the whole, if you're trying to do the death thing. There's so many reasons that it would be difficult to do that. And one is, in the comics when they're doing this, Jim Starlin, who came up with Thanos and came up with Captain Marvel, the Marvel character, and came up with Guardians of the Galaxy by way of coming up with Star-Lord as a completely different character. That dude built all this, and he built it slow and he built it psychedelic. and long storylines with like there's lots of panels of just like Thanos in this masked like hooded character with a skull, and then half the times it's a silent character with a skull, and half the times it's the same character with a woman's face. And they did in the comics world, they do this so much that you're accepting. There's like 87, a whole mythology of giant cosmic characters you're dealing with. There's a whole mythology of personifications in the Marvel universe of what death is, or like the Celestial that you're in the head of in the dead Celestial in Guardians of the Galaxy. That's a whole thing. So when they introduce these things, they've been introducing them either in ways where you can be like, wow, that was an amazing part of the scenery, or this is something I can accept because it's contained in some way. To introduce Thanos and to be like, I'm doing this because I want to bone death. Like, it's a lot to swallow. I totally get that what they came up with was entirely a good hook, meaning something you could be like, hey, in our world, we can identify with the notion that we might be overrunning the entire universe and our planet.
It's a postmodernist ideal, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's a contemporary thing of...
Mm-hmm.
We're worried about resources, and we've been doing that since the 70s. We've been worried about that. But
it's a common villain or common. It's a Bond theme. Every franchise has had a villain with.
And
it's
an easy,
reasoning.
very hook, and it might be too on the nose. Might be part of the problem. And part of the problem is that the logic just doesn't hold up. And I get that, but it would be so hard for them to do it. And not to say that they couldn't do it well, because they've done some amazing stuff well.
Okay, so back to Sinistar real quick. Did you have something you want to say, or look like you're
No, I'm mostly agreeing with.
I was wondering what's in your bottom tier.
Tarka the Otter.
What's in your bottom tier of MCU movies? The tier 4. For you personally.
Yeah, me personally, the Hulk movie. I thought, that was
with the original one.
Yeah. The first Thor, Iron Man 3, and the second Thor. And now keep in mind, these aren't, for me, I still enjoyed them a lot. You just got to rank them.
They're very flawed. Yeah. I was wondering if you meant like, if you were perceiving them by certain quality standards, or if you were like the comedic ones, like Ant-Man is in bottom tier for me. I was wondering how you were defining it, because some people would see the comedic movies as a completely different thing.
No, I'm across the board. It's just, to me, is it a good movie or not?
Okay.
I've enjoyed. I really enjoyed Ant-Man.
Me too. That's one of my favorites. Yeah. Tarkin, I didn't get to ask you. Do you have a favorite or a standout of the movies?
I do love pretty much all of them. My lower tier is pretty much the same as Sinistar's. The second
Iron Man 3 wasn't very good, was it?
But the funny thing about Iron Man 3 is it just doesn't fit. And they didn't. There's a funny parallel. They didn't know what to do with Iron Man outside of ensemble past the first movie.
The second movie kicks ass in an ensemble. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in the first one, it was all his character, and they knew what to do. They were, and that was, some of what goes into this is that it took them a little while to figure out what they did, and they figured it out better and better and better, and they're going to continue to do that until they fumble it, and then it's going to all fall apart. But you can see it over the years. So the first 2/3 of the Captain America movie are awesome. The first Captain America movie, and then when they get to their nonstop action and their official weakness of all comic book movies, the third act giant CGI fight. That first Captain America movie, I still love it, but that's not the best part. The best part is him and Peggy talking, and him interacting with the other soldiers and all that.
I thought it was the cool effects they did to make him the 90-pound weakling.
That was amazing.
Sand kicked in his face. Yeah, it was so unexpected at the time for me, and it showed you so much about the character. It was a great way to start that character and everything. So,
and both he and Downey, both the characterization they just bit into it and they went with it, and it's been a thread of wonderment through the whole thing. But they, like the third Iron Man movie is the only one I don't own, and it's not because I hated it, it's just because it's like I didn't buy the whole breakdown thing, didn't care. It's got a lot of silly stuff, especially the third act, whatever, and blowing up the armor, which is then immediately undone and whatever. But it was so much fun on other levels. It's just like, as somebody said, Shane Black, is that the director?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like it's a hymn joint is the way people put it. It's like it was that dude's movie, and that hasn't that I don't know, just made it not stand out. So, but I think the Captain America movies are the best of the, ones where they've done three. And I agree with the whole thing. It's basically segue into Avengers movies, and I think the one that most people cite as their number one movie is Winter Soldier, and I would not go against that because it's just freaking delightful. But they did something in that they've done throughout, which is once they got their footing, they started doing other movie tropes and other types of movies. So it's like a '70s thriller. It's Watergate meets action movie, And
it's part of the fun they can have with this stuff, though, when they're jumping around different periods. They have all this history to draw upon. Every cameo can be significant. They have a wealth of things to play with, and they have a lot of money to throw around. I think their casting has been a huge strength overall and everything. And my favorite MCU movie is probably the first Avengers, because I really liked Iron Man, and I really liked Captain America. Captain America was my other favorite, the first one, Captain America, the first Avenger, or whatever it was. But I really wasn't into the movies that much, and I did not go see Avengers in the movie theater, even though Joss Whedon, one of my favorite kind of TV writers and everything, and but I knew it was hugely successful, so that was cool. But I just didn't really, at the time, I think I was working really hard and just didn't have the motivation to go to the movies much. But I rented it on Blu-ray and popped it in or whatever, and it just blew me away. Like, it made me realize they could still make a blockbuster movie and make it decently all the way through. Like, I thought the whole movie was really good. And the last act, the big CGI fight you're talking about, was just brilliant, I thought. Yeah. I mean,
except for the puppet strings, that little bit.
I don't remember that. What was that?
He throws the nuke, they all drop.
Yeah, the whole Death Star plot again. Yeah, it is a chain reaction from the main reactor, and everything goes down. Yeah, we just saw it again. But anyway, that the CGI battle then just blew my mind. I mean, the fact that they could put something so complex that just went on, and it still had huge humorous moments, like the Hulk trashing Loki is going to be one of my favorite, moments in the whole thing. That still, I was watching that on cable with my mom the other night, and she didn't know what was going on. And when Hulk trashed Loki, she would just laugh her ass off. That was the greatest thing.
That laugh.
So yeah, he interrupted in the middle of his maniacal monologue. That was brilliant. But anyway, that movie kind of re-energized me on this whole thing and made me realize the possibilities that they're taking this halfway seriously as far as making it good and entertaining. I realized there's plot holes galore in every one of these movies. They're drawing together. You can imagine the writer's room and the board where they're trying to make all this work. It must just be insane. So I give them a lot of slack on things that don't make sense or don't quite add up to me, as long as it's entertaining. And as long as I get to see some of the heroes fight in every movie, which they do for no reason, which always happen in the comics. We want to know what happens if, the Hulk and somebody else strong punch each other or whatever. We want to know who's stronger. And then as long as we get just those moments where they work together, those are my favorite moments in all these movies. Yeah, when the moments where Tony Stark or Iron Man deflects his, whatever you call those things, the blasters in his hands off of Captain America's shield, and he angles him and takes out the
uses the force of his shield to deflect the blasters.
I love that stuff. And like in the one movie where Thor used the hammer to overload Iron Man's suit, and I mean they when they work together like that, I just think that's always killer and unexpected. Yeah. So but the first Avengers stands out to me is the one that really kind of blew my mind and made me realize something was going on, more so than just the Thor movies. I had kind of seen the Thor movies a little bit and the Iron Man movies, and I thought they were all okay. But the Avengers was like, wow, this is a big happening now, and they're really doing it. They're making it seem like a big comic where all these characters are coming together. And Hulk was one of my favorite characters in that movie. But overall, I think Captain America is probably my favorite because of the way they play him, where it'd be so easy to make him a parody, but they don't. They stay just on this side of parody with him. And I love that line in the Avengers where he said something like, Black Widow said, "Don't get involved, Cap. These guys are basically gods." And he said, "Ma'am, there's only one God, and he doesn't wear a cape," or something like that. I was like, that is amazing. Did they actually let Captain America say that line, in 2015 or whatever year it was, 2013, and still let Captain America be Captain America? I just loved that. And it was funny, but it wasn't a parody. It was close, but it wasn't. And the way that Chris Evans plays him is just really, really cool. And that was my one little joke that I thought kind of fell flat in the new movie it was America's ass. The America's ass joke. I thought they let him have his one moment of fun, where he kind of stepped over the line a little bit. And upon reflection, I was like, yeah, I don't know if Captain America would sit there and admire himself like that.
I was too busy swooning at everything in the movie to.
Yeah. Well, when Captain America's fighting Captain America, that's pretty damn cool. I mean, that's a great moment.
Well, that was in the middle of just piled on moment after moment. Yeah. So even the scene at the end of the Avengers, where they're all standing posing, and then they make a joke about it, and then they draw that whole scene out. That was wonderful. That movie was one. So one thing people complain about, they're like, "Oh, look, the fan service moment." This was one ginormous fan service.
Look at comic books. How can you make a Spider-Man movie and not take the covers of classic Spider-Man and put them on film?
Yeah.
I mean, how can you resist the temptation? Is that fan service, or is that the art of where this all comes from? We all know Spider-Man has certain poses that he uses and certain iconic covers and things. And are you really not going to touch that and just not go there? I mean, you have to.
The fan service complaint that people make is when it's like, well, the A-Force moment when they had all the women lined up. A lot of people were saying it seemed forced. So any moment where they're doing something for the fans that seems forced, that's what people complain about.
Yeah, and I agree.
Let me throw in to that point though, and I saw that when it was a little telegraphed, so I saw it as it was building up and all that. But I tell you, the 13-year-old that was sitting next to me watching it, she was blown away. Right. She loved it. So
was this 13-year-old.
Yeah.
If it had been a little less obvious, and a little more, I don't know, they were so like coincidentally they all come together and pose before they go into this moment. But I get it. It's a comic book. This would have been the cover, of that part of that portion of the story would have been all the women together posing. But they did do it in the movie before. They had the same exact scene where all the women did a thing together or whatever. So it's kind of like, are we gonna get over this? Making it special by pointing it out that it's special. You know what I mean? Just treat it like it's normal, and then maybe it will become more.
Are you referring to that scene, or are you referring to something in Infinity War? Because there was a lot of.
That's what I'm saying. Fight. There was the exact scene with all the women working together in one of the previous movies,
which was not at all forced.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
The Infinity War.
I don't remember.
And I don't get me wrong. I'm the 12-year-old. I loved that moment, but I was like, oh yeah, this is a little forced. But I still sat there and I'm just like, I'm eating it up.
Yeah.
Because
they put it in the right point, because so much is going on that you're past it before you even have a chance to register and really feel kind of upset about it. You're on to the next bit of action or whatever. So it was they probably did it in the right portion of the movie. Yeah. But I could do without. The movie didn't do that so much. I mean, it avoided those missteps so much that why.
But the thing is, it did that constantly. The whole movie was doing that. It's just that they earned every single one of them. They earned them with 23 movies, and they earned them with 10 years of your lives, or however long it's been. Sure. And the few times, I saw some interview or read some interview where they said they debated that one heavily in the various points of the filmmaking, and they're like, yeah, we're just doing it. I don't care. We know it's on the nose, but we're going to do it. Yeah. Like we this is our moment.
It didn't affect my enjoyment of the movie. It did take me out of the movie for a second. Yeah. When I was right in the middle of it, all of a sudden I'm thinking about what I'm watching, which you don't want to be doing that. You want to be right still in the middle of it. That's okay.
Kind of curious how to be.
We aren't the audience for that anyway. Like Sinistar said.
I am.
Okay, well, that's the
audience for all of it. Look. The first time they showed an ad, and I know Sinistar has some of this too. First time they showed an ad for the first Avengers movie, and they did the Hulk smash thing, and he smashed one of the aliens. And I could have cried. This is way down in my psyche, and it's like, oh my god.
Imagine how great it is to have a property where no matter how bad the movie is going, you just turn the Hulk loose and everything's fine. Really, even in the bad Hulk movies, when he smashes shit, it gets better. The movie just instantly gets better. You're like, this is why I was here. Now I remember. It wasn't all the drama, and it was just Hulk smashing stuff.
And even that they played with. Yeah, like, oh, this just seems a little gratuitous. Rawr,
yeah, that was great. That was a great joke. Okay, so I'm guessing from everybody's reaction here that you all liked this Endgame, right?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. No complaints. So let's see. What do we want to talk about here? Let's talk about if you guys have any knowledge of this, and we kind of touched on it. How does this vary from the comics? And you just accept it as its own thing, or is there stuff that kind of sticks out that you think they should have done differently? Because me, as having no knowledge of any of these storylines from the comics, I just accept what I see on the screen. Absolutely nothing hits me as wrong, you know.
I have long ago divorced the full connection, and Infinity War was kind of my last little, I've got to cut it off and just enjoy it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I just enjoy the movies for what they are. And I just treat it like any other time a different writer or a different artist takes over, drawing on a property. You just roll with whatever the changes are going to be. So I just roll straight along with it. And I really like where they're going with it. You mentioned that you enjoyed, Downey, Robert Downey and Chris Evans is your two favorite. I tell you, Tom Holland has totally.
Oh God, he's wonderful.
Which one is he? Oh, Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Peter Parker, of the three modern, takes on Spider-Man, he's got it by miles.
Yeah. Yeah,
I really was surprised by the first Spider-Man movie that they did with him. I went to it with my girlfriend, my sister, I can't remember who else, and everybody, everybody liked it. So It was kind of one of those movies, even though it was kind of a high school movie in a way, so we were probably way too old for it. It still did a real good job. Yeah, and Michael Keaton, you just can't go wrong with that guy. No, even though he freaking played Batman, you wouldn't think there's any way we went to see Batman in the theater, and so how could we accept him in another role or whatever? But he's so good it doesn't matter. You can just have him play in every movie and it'd be fine. He's so versatile and so good. So I still want to see that Birdman movie that he was in and he won the Oscar for. I haven't seen that, but I think that was a little bit superhero related about his experience with Batman and everything. So
that same thing you asked. I'm gonna
go ahead.
Cinepin, the Sinistar and Kingpin mashed together. I think Cinepin works really well, which makes you sound like a dessert pastry. So maybe we'll go back to Sinistar.
Maybe we should just call him Kingpin.
Kingpin works really well.
What was Kingpin's actual name?
Wilson Fisk.
Wilson Fisk.
Yeah, we'd call you Fisk, I guess.
Yeah. That sounds Star Warsy.
Fisk of the North Star.
who shot first, Han or Fisk? Han, yeah. So the Infinity War stuff has been told in the comics and reused multiple times too. And I'm not an expert on this, so they tell the story, and then some time goes by, and they're like, let's reuse that storyline and do something differently with it. And some of that happened before my time, and I read them, and some of it happened after my main time reading comic books, and I only read them recently. So my attachment to that stuff is not that intense. And the what they do, and they do this really well in the Marvel movies, but this movie was just entirely made up of it, is they find the touch points. They find the points of the story. Captain America's shield being cracked. They used that in the second Avengers movie, in the vision of the future, and they used it in this movie in actuality, and that's from an actual comic, and that's a touch point. How it happened can be completely different as long as they use it right, and they did that with lots and lots and lots of elements. And I am very detached, as I already said, from the notion of, oh my God, it differed from the original stuff. That's for some reason never bothered me. Kind of amused me actually, and so that's not my thing with this. It's all, am I in the movie? Am I enjoying this? Are they doing the great thing with it? Because they're piling amazing amounts of ridiculousness on top of things and making you buy it. Like I was thinking earlier, I meant to say, in the Winter Soldier is the one that people are like, that's the most solid. It's a drug. Hydra makes no. Are we allowed to cuss? It makes no fucking sense. Hydra makes no sense whatsoever. Nobody has that motivation and dedication, that suicide pill chawing secret dedication to 40 years of Hail Hydra. Like, it doesn't work. But you don't even notice that because it's like, hey, this all works in this context.
That's another point, though, for the kind of in the weak villains category, as far as understanding, the villains, their motivation, them being memorable, all that stuff. It's just,
they sold it Hydra, because you can actually buy the top line story of Hydra in that movie, of a bunch of guys who have, alleged, who like Order with them on top seems like a better thing, and they're the right people to do it. It's a parallel of the Thanos thing. We buy that theme. We get that theme. Sometimes we feel that theme. That's a
right.
Very modern theme where we were like, I know those villains. I'm subject to those villains, and maybe I could be those villains. So on top of an absolute absurdity. Because they tried. Right, even the Shield show then tried to explain the whole Hail Hydra thing with like mysticism and whatever, because they didn't know what else to do with it.
Yeah,
like there's mystical creatures that they're serving from the like.
I always enjoyed that show, but it was a mess. It was all over the place. About Endgame. What are your favorite moments from that? Is there anything that stands out that's like your favorite?
I loved the elevator scene.
The Hail Hydra.
Yeah, the Hail Hydra.
That was one.
That was big.
And I should have seen that coming and did not. That's how good
I didn't
thought.
See it coming either.
I was
trying to remember the original scene.
They just set you up for the fight.
Yeah,
that was well done.
Yeah, it was. Cap avoiding a fight that way was very clever. It was unexpected for his character, kind of. So, what else?
I geeked over the return too, when all the portals started opening and everybody starts coming back after the Hulk snap. Yeah. That was,
yeah. Doctor Strange finally does something useful.
And the swinging the hammer.
Yes. Yeah, my favorite moment was when Captain America picked up the hammer. Yep. Which I don't know, again, that I don't know if comic book people got mad about that or not. But
no, it's on the mark. It's on the mark. It's a beat to hit. It's a beat to hit in a huge way. It's as big a beat as the Avengers.
Let me ask you then, as far as you know, in the comics, who has picked up Thor's hammer? Thor and Captain America?
Captain America. Vision has not. That's something they did that I know of. I mean, I'll get this wrong. And Superman.
What? They did a crossover with Superman and Thor? Okay.
Yeah. No, with all the Avengers and all the like DC characters.
Okay, cool.
So, and I'd never read that, but I've seen the little thing with him holding the shield and holding the hammer. The shirt was ludicrous, and I don't know who else, if any. Well, Jane Foster.
Jane Foster, yeah. And then anyone else who served the role of Thor over the years. Did Beta Ray Bill actually ever use the hammer?
Yeah, Beta Ray Bill. Well, I don't know. I'm mixing it up with the cartoon. I didn't really read you read those. That's more your.
And dead brain cells. I don't,
But no villain ever used it.
Well, Thor, it's like no, a frog, an alien, his ex-girlfriend. In the Thor realm, you pick it up and you become a Thor.
Okay, yeah.
In the comics, so you get an outfit and everything. It braids your beard, the whole bit.
Very cool. That was my favorite moment, and I saw it in the theater this second weekend it was out. Or no, I saw it on Tuesday night, and the theater was packed on a Tuesday night. That was crazy. Yeah. And the theater went crazy when I can't remember if the hammer flew to his hand or it just showed him it or whatever.
Showed him hitting him with it, basically.
And then he had a nice long fight scene with it and everything too. And
all the lightning.
And then when Thor got the axe and all that, that was just great. That was probably my standout moment. And then several of the jokes that actually worked, because I'm not a fan of that style of humor all the time. I think it gets tiresome. Like in Infinity War, I thought there was way too much humor from the Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought they were in the movie way too much. That is my one kind of complaint about that movie. But the jokes seem to mostly land in this one. And I really liked a lot of the drama. A lot of people complain that the movie started off so slow, but I really loved the slow beginning.
Oh, I love that.
I wouldn't have complained if the movie was even longer, really, because it was all quality, it seemed like. I loved seeing Robert Downey Jr. seemed to be really back into the role again. I guess if this is going to be his last one, you just can't argue he turned in a great performance there. And with the little girl, she was, perfect and beautiful. And his whole family life that they established, which you knew something awful was going to happen from that point on, especially when Pepper said, "But could you rest?" or whatever. And you're like, oh no, this is going to be his final epitaph is now you can rest in peace or whatever. And in a way, I think Iron Man might be, because of this movie, might be the best Avenger character that we've seen. And right there with him would be Black Widow, but Black Widow didn't get the time and the development that's and just the sheer screen time that Iron Man's gotten, because Iron Man, we've seen like a complete journey of that character from the first Iron Man movie, where he was Robert Downey Jr. but a super genius and a capitalist and all that and warmonger, to who he is now. And in the first Avengers movie, Captain America challenged him, "Are you the guy that will lay down on the wire and let the guy next to you crawl over you or whatever?" Right. And he said, "No, I'm the guy that always finds a way out of it." And of course, he had to go on the suicide mission at the end of the first Avengers, but there was always that chance he could have survived that. It seemed like there was no chance, and so he's kind of come full circle with that character. So I kind of feel like, I don't know where they're going to go after this. You look around, there's a ton of characters, but that is their most fully realized character, I think, that they killed off. And the best, probably the best actor, so, but I guess it's time. It's been 10 or 12 years or something.
Yeah.
So, and that was beautifully done. I like that he didn't have any real last words except "I am Iron Man." That was cool. I don't understand how the Infinity Gauntlet works. I don't even know if you guys want to go into that. If anyone understands how it works, why it gave them gamma poisoning, I have no idea. And I thought that Thanos got gamma poisoning by destroying the stones. He ordered the stones to destroy themselves. That the power unleashed, I thought, is what burned him up. Also, I thought at the end of Infinity War, when he killed half the universe, I thought the gauntlet disappeared off his hand. No, and the stones scattered or something. I thought it showed him like
it was all broken.
It was broken. Okay,
it was broken. He was damaged from it. That's all they showed. That's what they showed. But it was
okay. So he was damaged at the end of it.
He used it to escape. I mean, he did wormhole out of his own magical.
Well, see, at the beginning of this movie, I was surprised he had the gauntlet still. I thought the stones, once you used them to make such a powerful wish or whatever, I thought they dispersed again. And I thought this movie was going to be them gathering them back again. Kind of like, I think I'm thinking Dragon Ball. Like when you bring someone back from the dead with the Dragon Ball, they scatter again. For some reason, I was under the illusion that was what was going to go on. So when I found out Thanos still had the stones, I was like, what the hell's, how are they going to get those from him?
Well, the original Infinity Wars, the original Infinity Gauntlet storyline, Thanos becomes a god. He's like they're drawing.
He basically
him
was, yeah.
But I mean, he becomes more of a god in a comic book sense. They're drawing of him through most of that comic book is an outline of his face over sort of purple outer space, and they're like, that's who they've got to fight. It's this guy who's like that.
Right. He's a concept.
he's a concept at that point, and and I don't remember it.
But he held on to the power longer, is what you're saying, that he did in this, where he could use it more continually and stuff like that.
Yeah, he didn't do some one grand thing. But the one grand thing is in there. I mean, that's from the comics. But
right.
But the original storyline, original storyline is he ascends to godhood, and I can't remember the details offhand like that. I don't remember how much of the death stuff was involved. I don't remember in the original Starlin storyline how complex it was. I think it was a lot simpler, and I think he becomes a god, and then they have to basically like get him to well, you're not really a god unless you come down and fight on our level. I just don't really remember, and it's not. And then they do another iteration of that story, and I think that's the one that has the whole.
But the idea in the movie is that if you have a gauntlet with all the stones in it, it's going to hurt you to use it, or is it because they created a fake gauntlet?
No,
they created
it's
like an Iron Man gauntlet.
That's in the movie. In the movies, that's not in the comics.
Yes.
That's
because you got to wonder why didn't they have an extra stone to like protect you from the other stones, like soul stone, this stone, that stone.
Well, they weren't made
gamma-proof stone.
They weren't made to serve this function of let's.
Oh, okay. Okay, they weren't. All right.
They were like formed with the universe is the notion in the movies,
right.
And they're floating around out there. And when you pull each one is a big power over some aspect of reality.
Okay, and my other question is, what happened to Loki?
Loki
got a new series.
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Yes. So he escapes in 2014 because he died. He died in Infinity War.
Right.
But when they went back in 2014, instead of him being taken back to Asgard, he escapes in the chaos.
And so he's going to have his own series?
He's going to have his own Disney Plus series.
Oh, really? That's cool.
There's going to be a Disney Plus series for him. There's going to be a Disney Plus series of the Winter Soldier and, I guess, Captain America Falcon.
Yeah.
And they're calling it Falcon and Winter Soldier. At least that was the working title. There's a fun one. There's a Vision and Wanda series. So we've still got the bringing back of Vision in some form to happen.
I was wondering about that. That was my big problem. One of my big problems with Infinity War was just how Vision went out and how he was never established as a character really, and how powerful I felt like he should have been.
Yeah.
I always thought of him as maybe the most powerful Avenger, and
he's a favorite character for me. So
yeah. But
my sister said I don't care about, I forget what she called the witch, but I don't care about
Witch.
Yeah, but I can't remember what she said because you're going to know why I'm saying this when I finish the sentence. She goes, I don't care about the witch, whatever she called him, and the fuck robot. So like she has no connection. But of course, I mean, and so like right the period when I was stopping, my sister's grown into this giant nerd, so she's like hiding it all when we were kids. When I stopped reading comics was when they had the Vision of Scarlet Witch married. They had, well, actually that happened back in the 70s, but they had they did their own little comic book run. They had a limited series with them, and they did a lot with them right in the main period where I was reading it. And the other thing is they're also going to do some animated series. They're going to do a What If series that's animated, which is going to be so much fun if they do it right.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then they're going to do a MODOK series, MODOK being the giant head floating in a chair guy, and like with a family element, like a MODOK family, and then some sort of assemblage of absurd villains. Like they're doing this
satire,
but the people write like what's his name, who played the clone guy or whatever the hell he was on S.H.I.E.L.D., who's the comedian. He did the great Star Wars monologue on Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Parks and Rec.
He's partly writing one of them, and he's in one of them. I think it might be the MODOK one. So like you get that there's some possibility with what they're doing.
It might be like the Tick or something.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
So what's next? Do you guys know that as far as movies go? I know the Spider-Man's coming out. Are they going to do any more Avengers, or is this the end of the Avengers?
Yeah, well, they got Spider-Man and then the Black Widow, which is probably going to be a prequel, just her origin or whatever. Then the Eternals, then Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2, Shanghai, and then Guardians Volume 3. So they've got 2, 4, 6, 7 movies on the books.
And is Thor now officially a Guardian of the Galaxy? Is he officially a comedy character now? Seemed like they established that in this movie. Because his tone didn't change much. He was a comedic character through the whole movie, except for a little bit of the drama with his mom, but not much. He was mostly comedy relief in the style of Guardians, I think. And when he joined the crew, it seemed like, okay.
You saw
Ragnarok. Yeah, Ragnarok was put him in that realm, and now he seems to be firmly in there to me.
They figured out that actor was really good at it.
Yeah, exactly. He is in the zone when he's doing those comebacks and the timing and everything. And It worked well for Chris Pratt. I mean, look, the guy's in everything. So, and that's his one shtick, really. So, as far as Avengers go, this is kind of the end then, except for
not necessarily. But I don't know what they're going to do. They don't have something right now, but I wouldn't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to ditch it.
You can easily do something, just like the Avengers have done over time. They just grow and adapt. I mean, you could right now, just with the leftovers, with Ant-Man, Black Panther, Winter Soldier, new Captain America, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel. I mean, you've got, the making whatever you want to do.
Something could happen to make them get the band back together in whatever form it's still going.
There's gossip. Well, also they do get the X-Men back and the Fantastic Four now because of the deals because of how that's going. Spider-Man's some sort of weirdo temporary arrangement, but I hope that's like not a real temporary arrangement. And they have all these great storylines that people look to and think, oh, are they going to do this? Like before Ragnarok came out, are they going to do World War Hulk or whatever, which I had no attachment to whatsoever. And then they did this amazing different thing with it. It's so much fun. They have something called the Annihilation Wave, which was actually where they rebooted the Guardians of the Galaxy, made them into the thing that became transformed into the movies later, which was this amazing thing where they took a mainline Fantastic Four villain from an alternate dimension, basically from oh my god, I just cramped on the name of the Fantastic Four dimension, but this like bug-like emperor thing, and they basically had him come into this universe and just start like boom, conquering the whole thing. And they brought all these characters in, and they did what the cosmic side of the Marvel universe, where they have all these characters fighting in space, which sounds really stupid when I'm saying it, but it was actually done in this amazing. It's really a great read. It's one of the things when I started reading, getting back into them, I read that storyline. Like, oh wow, they could do amazing things with these things with modern sensibilities, still doing completely whack shit. And so people want them to do that storyline when they get the Fantastic Four back. There's all this stuff they haven't touched because they can't. There's all this stuff that's been touched in the Fox X-Men in the sense of like, show me on the doll where they touched you. It's just been done poorly for the most part.
Right.
And so they've got a lot they can play with. They've got more they can play with than they can do.
Yeah.
And, well, what the game has shown us is that if and when they want to pull Secret Wars out, they could do it and probably do it.
Yeah, and which another thing that in my head is one of the stupidest ass things in the history of Marvel Comics is Secret Wars. Like freaking Civil War. I'm like, whatever, There's actually some good comics back in that period, but these storylines, some of them are just stupid to me because I wasn't 12 when I was reading them. And but then they take them and they do some really good thing, like the Civil War. They did. My comment about Hydra being absurd, notwithstanding, they did an amazing movie. So they could do some crazy stuff with this, and I love that they do these things and they go somewhere I didn't expect them to go. This movie was one giant. I knew the rumors. And some of it's obvious. They telegraphed there's time travel involved. They didn't telegraph, but it was so obvious. Like if they can go back and hit a bunch of the other movies in some way. Like we felt it coming, even if we didn't see the rumors, because I actually didn't learn a lot about this movie before I went to see it.
I knew nothing about it. Yeah, I avoided all the spoilers and everything.
But it's still.
It was like 3 movies in one. It was the intro that caught you up to where everybody was, and the melancholy kind of intro, then the heist movie where they in time travel, and then the big throwdown at the end, which I thought was very satisfying. And I wanted to touch on this too, that why I think Thanos is one of the best villains they've ever had, because I wasn't necessarily sold on him as the background lurking character in all these movies, was when he showed up, when he actually used their knowledge and everything against them and outthought them in this movie. That's one of the first times I can remember when it wasn't just plot convenience. Most of the time they catch the villains up right where they need to be, and they kind of did this and that, but they just sold it better to where he paid attention and caught what was going on and pretty much just messed up their world at the end. And my favorite bit was when he just went and sat down and waited for him. I mean, that is one of the all-time badass moves, when he took his helmet and put it on his helicopter blade or whatever that weapon was, and he just sat down and waited. And you see, like, I think it was Iron Man, Captain America, and was it Hulk? or Thor. It was Thor. They all come up on the top of that ridge and they look down and they say, "What's he doing?" And Captain America says, "He's just sitting there." And you got three of the baddest ass, guys in the universe all looking down this one guy who's just waiting. He doesn't care who comes for him. He's ready for whoever comes down for him. I thought that made him so intimidating, so much more so than the little throwdown he had with Hulk at the beginning of Infinity War, which was a little, too pat or whatever, and also kind of messed up the Hulk for me because it was just a way not to animate the Hulk for the rest of the movie. I felt like, just
to bring it back to your realm, so his sitting down was Vader's striding into whatever room the gunfire is going on.
Right.
I'm just walking in here.
Like the way at the end of Empire when Vader leaves the room and everybody's just shrinking down in their seats and watching his feet go by. I kind of convey it to that. Like everybody knows he's a badass, but it ended up working against him because he screwed around and got defeated at the end. Just at the end, they didn't have a good way out of that. But in the moment, I mean, that's Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor coming down to meet you, and he's just sitting there. I mean, those are pretty impressive dudes that they've established in these movies, and of course, him screwing around waiting meant that Captain Marvel could show up and everybody else could show up. So he kind of made a mistake there. But anyway, Loki is one of my strongest villains in these movies because he gets the good dialogue, just like Tony Stark gets all the good dialogue for the good guys. And but as far as a heavy, I thought Thanos ended up being, even though it took me a while to get past the whole animation thing and Josh Brolin looking like whatever he looks like there. Being stretched into this scrotum-faced, animated character, Smurf or whatever. He looked like he's in an Avatar or something. But it took me the first movie to get past that. But once I did, and the way he fought at the end, I just love that battle. I'm almost going to go see the movie again, break my rule of seeing superhero movies twice, just to see that last 30 minutes where they're throwing down, when he's throwing that helicopter blade around everything. Just some of the stuff they did there was so cool. And
it's funny to hear some of the stuff that you had to get through because I go in and I don't have to get through that stuff. I'm just like, oh my God, they've got him up there. That's Thanos. That's a good representation of Thanos. He goes right to the 12-year-old button for me. So it's And
I will say it was sad that Black Widow is gone forever, evidently, because I don't think she deserved that. And I thought Scarlett Johansson was awesome in this movie. Actually really acting. I mean, some of these people I could see it'd be easy just to take the checks and just look good and CGI my flaws out or whatever. Right. But she really carried the first half of that movie, her and Tony Stark. That scene where he has that mental breakdown and goes off on Captain America was another one of my favorite moments from the beginning of the movie, where he pulled the piece off his chest and threw it on the ground. That was awesome because it related to so much from the first movie, from the first Avengers movie, and from their relationship and everything. So, did you guys think the end of Captain America was satisfying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was fine with that.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool, but again, I don't know the character people that have read it and all that stuff. But I thought it was good and consistent. I'm sure there was plot holes there and time continuum issues, but who cares? I mean,
I've read all the conversations about that. I'm down with how they earned it out.
I thought it was just
their basic thing is that your timeline's your timeline, and you're not changing your timeline. You're changing.
I was expecting him when he handed the shield to Falcon. I expected him to say, "Earn this." I thought it was very much like the end of what was that movie, Saving Private Ryan. Earn this, with the trumpet playing in the back of the door. Because it looked very much shot like that.
No, it was, and I don't use this term negatively. It was big fan service to see him with Peggy.
Yeah,
and that's part of back in one of the very first movies. It's like the third or fourth of the ones where they were getting their actual stride. Everything after Iron Man, I count. That was a big heartbreak at the end of that movie. It worked.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And then she died of old age in in the what was it, the first, was it
Civil War?
Civil War. Okay.
Yeah,
but
you saw her in Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
right.
You see her in Winter Soldier.
And he flirted with her granddaughter briefly, which was creepy.
They made out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, they kissed. That was one of the great scenes in
It's niece, not granddaughter. So
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There you go. Yeah. Okay.
and
That's
that's
better.
that's
That makes
straight
it a
out
little
of the
less
comics, by the way.
creepy. Oh, cool.
Because so that they, Captain America was a 1940s comic book character, so they had him actually doing all this stuff and fighting this was in that time period Captain America dates back to. And so that when they bring him back later, so Captain America resurfaced in the Avengers, like Avengers 3 or 4, they thaw him out they find him floating, and he becomes an Avenger, and then eventually becomes the leader of the team for a while. But they in the old comic books, his girlfriend was Peggy Carter, and then when they're basically just rehashing the plot lines of those old things, they want him to date Peggy Carter again. So they're like, it's her niece.
Right.
So the thing that they did is not even hitting a beat. It's exactly out of the comics.
Right. Last question, we'll wrap this up. Because this is a Star Wars channel that we're going to put this on. Do you see any possibility in the future of a Star Wars Marvel crossover? Seeing that Marvel once did and Star Wars, let's face facts, Star Wars kind of saved Marvel financially in the late 70s with that comic and everything. So are we so cynical and jaded and money hungry that we're going to see this happen before we all die, or will we be dead and gone?
if we
Won't care.
do, they'll open the door with the animated What If. What if the
There you
Guardians
go. That's the way they could do it.
Yeah. We'd swallow that too. Sure, why not?
I remember the people saying that Han Solo was Star-Lord's father back when the Guardians of the Galaxy came out.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, it's got to be Han Solo." I was like, "What?
You swim in different waters, my friend. I never heard that one.
I heard that one. Like they've been expecting, Luke Skywalker to show up, or a hologram from somebody saying, "Help us in the Star Wars galaxy." That would be so awful. Chewbacca. Chewbacca is just a suit, so he could show up anywhere. I mean, I hope not, though. That would be gruesome.
No,
they have so much better stuff to do.
Now the comics would do it. I don't know if the comics already did it. I would be surprised if there wasn't a crossover comic somewhere that I don't know about. But
okay, so I think we're gonna wrap this up. I want to thank Tarkin the Otter, and Fisk Sinistar over there.
Cinefist.
Thank you for we went all over the map, and if anybody watches this, congratulations. More power to you. Hope it was even slightly entertaining, and like the video, subscribe to this channel if you would. We're going to probably in future do more stuff like this, because there's going to be a lot more of this kind of stuff than there is Star Wars in the future. And although I am looking forward to The Mandalorian, that's my one sort of hope in the Star Wars universe currently. Appreciate you guys coming on for this. Thank you for being guests tonight. And our 35 years of friendship had nothing to do with it, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Or however many years it's been now. I don't even want to think about it. All right. Signing off. You guys have any last thing to say before I hit the stop?
No, thanks for having us.
Yep. Catch you next time.
Solo. Greedo. Solo. Greedo. Greedo. Solo.